Good evening. Gold imports into India surged 23% to 100 tons in January as traders snapped up supplies ahead of a hike in duty by a government struggling to rein in its import bill. India is the world's biggest bullion buyer and the government is trying to curb imports, second only to oil in value, to rein in a current account deficit which hit a record 5.4% of gross domestic product in the September quarter. January's imports were the highest in 18 months. The government hiked import duty to 6% from 4% on January the 21st after hints from Finance Minister P. Chidambaram on January the 2nd there could be an increase. In January 2012, gold imports fell 35% year on year. Gold imports in 2012 fell 11.25% to 860 tons, partly as a result of a previous tax hike. The Finance Ministry and the RBI have already identified gold imports as a key concern, and the government swung into action by increasing the duty on the yellow metal recently. Besides, there is a concerted effort on the part of the government now to encourage households to shift from investing in the yellow metal to financial instruments. But as the figures in front of us suggest, the craze for gold in India does not seem to be subsiding, with households still preferring to buy gold as a safe haven investment. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight on The Big Picture, we ask our panelists whether the love for gold that Indians seem to have is proving to be harmful for the Indian economy. We will discuss whether curbing gold imports has really worked and why raising the duty on gold doesn't seem to be having the desired effect. We will also discuss possible remedies and solutions. And joining me tonight will be Soma Banerjee, National Policy Editor at the Economic Times, Pinaki Chakraborty of the NIPFP, as well as GS Pillai, former Regional Director of the World Gold Council. Welcome all to the show. I'd like to start with Mr. Pillai, if I could this time. Sir, welcome to the show, first of all. Let's look at the figures we have. How do you really explain this? Gold imports, okay, forget gold imports for a minute. Gold consumption doesn't seem to be going down in India. The fascination for gold seems to be there. There is this view that we have to cut our fascination for gold and gold imports for us to have any shot at correcting the current account deficit. Do you really see that happening in the current market, in the Indian market?
To be honest, I don't think any of those things happening. If you're thinking that because of the increase in customs duty from 4 to 6%, the consumption would come down, I think you are far away from reality.
So you think that's flawed logic?
Totally flawed logic. If you historically look at the price of gold and the import of gold, 10 years back, what was the price of gold and what was the import and what is it today? Looking at that scenario, it has gone up by 3 times, 4 times. The consumption should have been 1/4 of what it was 10 years back. Any period of time you take, last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, prices have been going up, but the consumption has been, import has been going up. So if you apply the same logic, it doesn't work. So the appetite of gold will continue, and I think it is a good reason it should continue, because finally it's a good investment and it's the only asset which you can sell at any point of time, anywhere in the world.
Right. I have a couple of questions on that, but I'll come to that in just a bit. I want to get some further reactions from Professor Chakraborty first. Do you agree with what Mr. Pillai said? It doesn't look like the fascination for gold is going to reduce anytime soon, and do you agree with it?
I think there are two things. One is fascination, which has link with our culture of possessing gold. Other is absence of financial instruments in which a household really can invest. So you have very little financial inclusion happening, and everybody knows that gold is an appreciating asset. So people continue to invest in gold. So I don't think really, I agree with Mr. Pillai that tax as an instrument really cannot curb demand to a great extent. Maybe at the margin it might, but it will not, because the relative portion of the tax and that without tax, the price of the gold has increased multifold. Right. So it is always a lucrative investment to make. So gold demand is will continue to increase. But the point here is today's import. Like you have something like 2% of GDP you are importing as a gold. So if you take it out, your current account deficit comes to a comfortable zone of 3.5. It's still higher, but it's okay. But in that context, if you look at, I think you have to look at in the context of overall macroeconomic environment. I think there has been a crisis of confidence on other international currencies because of the problem in America as well as in the Eurozone. And naturally, you move to a safer investment, and that is gold. So that is one thing that is definitely going to continue unless the global situation improves. Second point which I would like to emphasize is the issue of gold as a safe investment would continue irrespective of the fact whether you have a global crisis or you have a macroeconomic uncertainty and otherwise. And third point, which I'll reassert, the point is it is almost a liquid asset. So it is very easy to hold them compared to other assets.
Right. Soma Banerjee is also with us right now. Soma, you heard what the previous guests had to say. First of all, I'd like to ask you, do you agree with the assessment that my previous two guests said? Then I have a question for you.
Well, first is that you're asking this question to a woman, and I'm the only woman panelist over here. Gold and jewelry are some things which a woman rarely says no to. So, yeah, going by my gender, I should say, I agree with whatever they have said.
Right.
But on a more serious note too, I think gold today is an investment which people prefer over other alternative investments.
Right, absolutely. Which brings us to the question, Soma, and I'm putting this to you first. Can less import of gold really check the growing current account deficit that is threatening to touch Soma right now, 5.4%? The government, on its part, certainly seems to think so. Do you think so?
You know, actually, we can't look at gold in isolation. We have to look at gold as a part of the total economy and what returns you have got from other investment options. It's true that it's a huge worry for the current account deficit. It's true that the finance minister and the RBI governor will want to do anything possible to reduce imports of gold. But look at it from the investor point of view. You've seen a huge, almost it's a V curve almost on the markets, or a U curve, where you've seen returns on equity go up and down, and it's been pretty volatile. Real estate has run into trouble, which was another way of investment where people put their money in, but it has unlike gold or unlike equity or something else, there is no liquidity in that. You're locked into a real estate. Plus, the recent scams over real estate has now made people wary about buying or putting their money into land or locking it into land. Third and most important, I think gold has given them good returns. And today, I don't need to just go and buy jewelry. There are instruments which are there where I can just put in a little bit of money, 500 rupees onwards, almost like an SIP for a mutual fund or an equity, where I can keep investing in a bit of gold. And a gold is as good as cash money, which will come to my help in any day of crisis or even when I want to make a piece of jewelry. So I really think there is very little that the government can really do until and unless the economy stabilizes and your other alternatives start giving you a very good rate of return, which helps the investor to move away from a commodity like gold.
Right, Soma. Very quickly, Mr. Pillai, do you agree with Soma there? And then we go into a break.
I totally agree with what she has been saying. And I'm happy that she strongly favors promoting gold.
Absolutely. We'll take a small break right now. I have some other questions from my panelists. Some questions on a slowing economy and what effect that has on people buying gold. That's after the break. Don't go anywhere. Keep watching The Big Picture. Welcome back to The Big Picture. We're discussing whether India's fascination for gold, India's households' fascination for gold is really a boon or the bane for the economy. Is curbing gold imports really going to help improve our current account deficit? I'll go to Professor Pinaki Chakraborty, who's with us, even P. Chidambaram's cabinet colleague, Commerce Minister Anand Sharma. Now, he says that curbing gold imports alone cannot help improve the skewed trade balance. He has a point, if you really look at it, at about $60 billion, gold imports were the second largest in the basket, second largest component of the import bill last fiscal, when inward shipments touched about 489 billion and exports only netted about 306 billion. Does he have a point?
I think so, because it is absolutely impossible to manage current account deficit by targeting a commodity like gold. I think you really cannot do that.
Or just one commodity.
One commodity. And it is also kind of an price inelastic import because of the lucrative investment return that you get. Absolutely. It's like petrol. So as you cannot control demand for petrol because it is price inelastic, same is the case with gold. So this changing tax in the at the margin is not going to really help. I think fundamentally there are certain issues with the current account deficit. If we look at the macroeconomy, a very high fiscal deficit. The mirror image of fiscal deficit is the current account deficit, because your domestic absorption going up. So if you have to really control your current account deficit, you require to control your fiscal deficit. That is the first thing the government should do. Second thing, which is long run, is the question of growth. The growth has to increase in the medium term. Third is the export demand, which is not in our control. It will depend what happens to the Eurozone, how American economy moves, and how our other trade partners move. So I think it is very important. So it is not only the import that we should target. I think we also should think of how to improve our export earning through diversification. And another thing that is important to understand here is the invisible services. Services export also will have to be taken into consideration given the global recession that has taken place.
Absolutely. I think you raised some very important points. I want to go to Mr. Pillai first. Reality is that it's a slowing economy. We all know that. We've known that for about 2-3 years now. And low returns, like you said, on investments also leave consumers little choice, really. And as a result, gold has become an investment tool. It is also often said that gold is also an unproductive, quote-unquote, investment. Do you agree or disagree?
To be honest, it's like glass half empty or half full, which way you want to look at it. It may be unproductive at a particular point of time. You buy jewelry from a jeweler, put in the locker, so what sense does it make? But it's only when you have a hard time, when it can be uncashed, it is productive.
Right.
And that is one of the reasons why most people in India, if you look across the country, especially in the rural areas, most of them depend on the investment in gold they have made over a period of time. When there is a drought, they probably go and sell the jewelry in the market and collect the money. So it's an asset of last resort. You can't ignore that reality. And the other point which I would like to mention, what Pinaki mentioned earlier, to reduce the consumption, it's not necessary to increase the import duty.
Right.
The other instruments,
that's not the only way to go about it.
That is not the way at all, according to me. There are other methods. Nothing is short term, it could be long term, but one should have thought about it probably 10 years back or 15 years back. Anyway, it's never too late. One can even still think about it. If you are increasing the customs duty, thinking that the consumption is going to come down, it will only encourage parallel imports, which all of us know
have increased.
It is always, it will always increase for any product. Because people who import any product parallelly, they only look at the revenue they can generate, the margins which are there. With 6% margin, it is big enough for a commodity product like gold, because it doesn't consume a lot of space to import. It comes in small parcels, so it's very easy to import gold through any parallel channel. And that will only increase the parallel economy.
Right. I want to get Soma into the picture right now. Soma, the RBI also, there's this idea that the RBI seems to be tinkering with. The RBI wants the government now to set up a gold bank called the Bullion Corporation of India. All imports, as you already know, Soma, are channeled through public sector banks currently. Conventional logic would suggest setting up an alternative channel would really make operations more expensive. Your thoughts on the alternative channel for gold imports?
You know, I think these things are not going to really discourage gold imports. But before I get into what could encourage or discourage, there are two very interesting points made by the panelists.
Right.
One, I think it should be a worrying factor that you are having inelasticity for gold, and to compare gold with petrol or to compare gold with, say, food items, which are actually inelastic, is, to my mind, pretty worrying, because petrol is something which can stop your economy, food is something which you need to move around with, but surely gold buying cannot be inelastic. But the consumption behavior is pointing out towards it being an inelastic product, which I think is a pretty worrying fact to my mind. Second point, Athar, which I really want to understand, and maybe the panelists can throw light, is who are these importers? I mean, is it only retail consumers or people who are helping retail consumers import? Or are we seeing really big corporate money also moving into gold? Because, when it becomes in such bulk, I really wonder if it is only small-time retail investors who are actually investing in an equity or land who are now getting into gold, or are there also big guys, big companies, big deep pocket people who are now parking money on gold as a commodity? If that is happening, then I think it's a very, very worrying factor, because gold being unproductive is one thing, but money which actually should be going into capital investments or into getting the economy to grow is actually getting into, I would say, a dead asset for a company, into something like gold, simply because it gives you a better return than, say, generating electricity, or say a project which could help the economy, but your returns are so low because you have a skewed pricing system. So I think it's important at this point, before getting into setting up an, the RBI machinery or anything else, if the government or anybody could look into who really are the importers of gold.
Right.
And if the corporate sector is really taken to importing gold in a systematic way.
Right, Soma, point taken. I want to put your question actually to my guest one by one. Mr. Pillai, who are these people who are importing gold? Is there a corporate interest there?
Soma has put too many questions and issues all at the same time.
Let's start with the corporate interest there.
To begin with, the gold which is imported by the various banks, it is supplied in the market to the various retailers and manufacturers or wholesalers who are in the chain. Ultimately, it's the consumer who buys the jewelry from the market and retail customers. And if you look at the number of shops which are opening all across India, and especially in south of India, where affinity to gold is pretty strong, every month there is a new showroom opening, and each showroom is larger than the previous showroom which is opened. So that trend is still continuing, and the consumers are buying jewelry on a regular basis.
Right.
Even if you look at the crowd in any of the shops in anywhere in India.
Right.
As far as bulk buyers are concerned, it's impossible to come out with a statistics or number who is buying how much in terms of retail customers buying in bulk. But I'm sure where there's a parallel economy, there would be a certain amount of this money coming into the system for investing in gold, where the product price is appreciating every month or every year.
Right.
So there could be some people coming into it.
Point taken. I think Shoma wants to say something, but Shoma, just give me 1 second. I want to go to Mr. Pinaki Chakraborty. I want to go to Mr. Pinaki Chakraborty first, get his views in, and then you can make your point. I promise I'll come back to you. Yes, Pinaki, you heard what Soma said. She raised a couple of pertinent questions. What is your take on it?
No, I think it is very important to understand that gold being a very lucrative asset in terms of return. And given the fact that we have a large unaccounted black economy, this is also one way of holding black income.
Absolutely.
So you really do not know who is holding this gold. Now, I understand there are estimates which southern India actually consumes 50% of the gold. So where is the rest 50% goes? How much is the corporate interest in this? I really do not know. I have no information on that. It's difficult to say also. So I don't want to make a guess on that. But I think one of the ways that black economy gets invested is through an instrument called gold rather than the real estate. So in that context, I think one has to be extremely careful when one is talking about increasing the excise duty or increasing the sales tax rate on gold to curb consumption. Once you do that, you are going to push gold to the black sector more.
Before I go to Shoma, one very quick supplementary. Your thoughts on the Bullion Corporation of India floated by the by the RBI? Is it a good idea?
I don't know. I think it is very important to understand the fact that if we change the design as such, it's not going to change unless you have alternative investments which is available for you, which gives you equivalent return or a better or safe return.
Right.
So if that doesn't happen, it is not going to change the things at the macro level.
Right. Shoma, you wanted to interject then. Go ahead.
There's no clarity on, and both the panelists actually are not being able to shed light. I don't think there is enough data that we have as to how the gold is getting imported, who are the consumers of gold. And while I agree with Mr. Pillai that we see a number of shops going up, the jewelry shops are up, but gold buying still by lower middle class people is still seen as something which they do for times of need. I mean, if it's a marriage or if it's something like that. It's only the urban middle class or the higher middle class who's now started looking at gold as an investment option. So, it's become fashionable even for a salaried class people to actually have in his or her portfolio some bit of gold, which he can, either encash at some point or make it. So the the only way I see forward is not through such artificial barriers or putting a customs duty, and I agree completely. You're going to push the product into the black money market, and people are going to do those imports, only that it will go to happen illegally. So I don't think such kind of restrictions really help. But what really needs to be looked into is what is the other option that you're providing to an investor, or you're providing, and for that you need the economy to come back. And I think it's a egg and chicken situation, fiscal deficit, current account deficit. How does the economy go up? But that's where it lies, I think.
Right. So we'll take another small break right now. Closing arguments on the big picture on the other side of this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the big picture. Now, I want to go to Mr. G.S. Pillai again, very quickly, sir, if you could. Let's look at what's really happening around the world. I'll give you some figures that I read today. All other countries seem to be increasing their gold reserves. The US has over 8,000 tons. Germany has over 3,500 tons. France and Italy over 2,400 tons. China more than 1,000 tons. Switzerland more than 1,000 tons. Russia close to 1,000 tons. Netherlands around 700 tons. Industry reps like you said, that the problem is not with gold, it is with the functioning of the Indian economy. The problem is low private demand and high inflation. What is the outlook on that view?
I don't think there's low private demand in India, and I don't know the reason why the government is not looking at that angle like other countries. But as far as private demand is concerned, it has always been there and it will continue to be there. And as long as private demand is there will be increase in imports of gold, and the consumption would definitely be going up.
Right. Do you think low private demand is not the problem?
No, I think you raised a very important point, the level of inflation. I think if your level of inflation is high, automatically your real return on any kind of investment is coming down. It's very difficult. So it might be negative.
And we've seen that happen in the past.
Seen that happening. So in that situation, if you look at the import of gold, it's quite justifiable from the point of view of investors. Investors is not concerned about the macro current account deficit. They are concerned about their return. So if the inflation is going up, and in such a situation, if you see an appreciating asset, you will definitely invest, whether it is gold or real estate.
Right. Soma, very briefly, if you could, I want to do one more round of questions with all my guests. I don't have much time, but do you think that high inflation is the problem and not low private demand? Very briefly.
I agree completely. I agree completely that high inflation is the one which drives people to a commodity like gold, because at the end of the day, like Professor Pinaki said, it is the return which the consumer is bothered about. So he's not in Chidambaram's shoes or in anybody else's shoes who is to really think of the economy. I, as a consumer, will only look at my return.
Absolutely.
So I think inflation is a very big point which drives towards demand for gold.
Absolutely. Last question on the show. I want answers from all of you. Soma, first I'll come to you. Do you expect any more policy moves on curbing gold import? Because exports, very recently we got the figures, exports seem to have turned their corner and the problem continues to remain on the import front. Do you think the RBI might start to even advocate a further clampdown on gold import, or maybe some other sort of steps as well?
You know, if I know a little bit about what Dr. Subbarao is like and Mr. Chidambaram is like, both of them are not people who believe in restrictive policies to actually impact upon demand and supply, and they've seen what they could do with it. I don't really see them doing much about bringing in negative things, but they may do things to actually promote investments in other instruments, which could take the attention a little away from gold and into something else. So instead of curbing one, you just try and lift the other so that the consumer can move to something else.
Right.
And I think that could work in the long run.
Right. Pinaki, did you agree with that?
I think so, because I don't think that they will have a prohibitively high tax so that discourages gold import. It will encourage parallel economy. So that's not going to happen. So I think also it is also important when you are having an appreciation of capital gains in terms of gold investment. I think it is also important the government tries to plug that money in terms of capital gain tax, which probably doesn't happen. It again happens in a very informal way, that you sell gold, get the money, no tax is paid. So if all those things come in, then people will really make, if there is a formal market of gold exchange, and if we promote that, probably people will understand the post-tax return and pre-tax return. And in such a situation, probably they would think of alternative investment, which is not now there.
Right. Mr. Pillai, do you think the RBI is going to act anytime soon? My other two guests seem to think that they're not people who believe in restrictive policies. That's good news for the industry also.
That's right. In fact, if RBI has to restrict in some way or the other, probably it has to think loud and come out with the funniest idea: ban marriages for the next 50 years. then it can possibly happen. Otherwise, by increasing the sales tax or increasing the import duty, I don't think you can bring down the consumption of gold, which is going into jewelry. And no matter how many girls wear jeans throughout the year, when they get married, they have to get into a traditional Indian dress with a lot of jewelry.
Laden with gold.
Yes, laden with gold. That has been happening all across the country, and that will continue to happen probably for the next 50 years, 60 years, or I don't know how many years.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to get in just 30 seconds, Soma. I only have 30 seconds. Last word on the show to you. We have 30 seconds.
I'm going to differ from what Mr. Pillai said, simply because I think in today's day and age, when women want to have their own identity, I would not like to be known as one who's laden with gold. There are many things apart from gold which I would like to be laden with, to be at par with men. And so on that note, I think at least I wouldn't want to say, it's a great thing to be all laden with gold. I mean, gold is a commodity and a woman is not a commodity. I can't bear but say this, being the woman on the panel.
Right, Soma. Maybe diamonds are better. Gold probably is yesterday's news. I have to end the show at that point. Soma Banerjee, many thanks for joining us on The Big Picture. Pinaki Chakraborty as well as GS Pillai, many thanks for joining us. Of course, the jury's still out on the question whether gold is really a bane or the boon for the Indian economy. Like I said, the jury is still out. That's all the time we have on The Big Picture tonight. Athar Khan saying goodbye, good night, and thank you for watching.